New York City has always had areas that were in the flood zone, right? I mean, we are surrounded by water. Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens. Those areas closer to the waterways are typically marshy areas, poor soil, and subject to flood. Hurricane Sandy changed the world forever in New York City with respect to flood laws. It forced the city of New York to revamp the entire code. Flood zones increased. And then with flood zones, they have something called a flood resistant construction elevation, which is like how high the building needs to be off the ground to be out of the flood zone. There's no set number. The number changes based on where you are, right? Some areas are higher or lower along the coast. But similar to maybe the Jersey Shore, where you see these homes on these wood piles, you start to see that a lot more now in New York City, in Queens, in Brooklyn, in Staten Island, because you have really low-lying areas. There's a difference between a wet flood-proofed and dry flood-proofed building. When you're dry flood-proofed, these are really commercial buildings which are forced to be on the ground because you can't have handicapped people climbing all these stairs up. Those buildings have to be designed in a way where, in the event of a flood, water doesn't get into the building, right? So we have to install floodgates in front of the doors, in front of the windows, where the people inside, in the event of a flood, have a certain amount of time to get out. With respect to residential homes, they're mostly raised, and they're considered wet flood-proofed, where the bottom of those homes are designed for water to wash in and wash out. So it's very important if you're going to do an enlargement or a new building near the water, confirm if you're in the flood zone or not, because you may have substantial additional costs to raise those buildings. One other thing is insurance, right? After Hurricane Sandy, homeowners were forced to raise their homes. If you have a building that doesn't meet the code, your flood insurance is going to be very, very expensive. And it might behoove you just to raise the home to get out of there to save those additional costs.
Is it public information to find out if you're in a flood zone or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if in another tips video,
Yeah.
I provide the top 10 or 15 things you could do for free, cost you nothing,
Gotcha.
to learn about your property. And yes,
Right.
there are free websites you can go on. I'll put it in the link below on where you can determine if your property is in the flood zone or not.